Hi, everyone. Welcome to Freebird Spirit YouTube channel. And I'm so excited as we move into Wisdom Through Awakening Discussion 8, right? We're on Discussion 8. So if this is your first one, you might want to go back and catch the other ones as well. But I'm super excited to dive into our discussion today. And today, and this is Chrys. Hi, Chrys. Just in case they're not new and they're popping in for the first time. So today we're talking about holding space and what that means. We're going to share some experiences of receiving that from others, and also opportunities to offer that to others and holding space in this human experience that we're going through, right? And there's so many layers to holding space. But Chrys, can you read? Go ahead, and I thought that was a good description, a good clear description.
Yeah, I don't. It's from tinybuddha.com. Somebody named Heather Plett. But I found it the other day. What does it mean to hold space for another person? It means that we are willing to walk alongside another person in whatever journey they're on without judging them, making them feel inadequate, trying to fix them, or trying to impact the outcome. The word fixed just jumped out at me. When we hold space for other people, we open our hearts, offer unconditional support, and let go of judgment and control. And that was the theme today, was referring back to the last two videos, was, about dealing with the death sentence, and wanting people to stop trying to fix it. And so that resonated right away. So willing to walk alongside another person, whatever journey they're on, without judging.
And without trying to fix that.
Yeah, without trying to fix it. And I think I said before, sort of like holding their energy in a bowl, sort of like kind of idea, like it's just holding it there. And sometimes that means something simple, like what you've done for me on occasion, just good morning. I'm not invisible. I'm not forgotten. Just it's a moment, it's like, oh, great. Or it's something very powerful, like what I did this morning with a neighbor who is struggling through advanced breast cancer. And holding the space was just sitting with her and letting her tell her story. Just, you don't have to fix it. You don't have to hug. You don't have to do anything except listen. But actively listen, just making sure they know you're listening. Or depending on who it is and what that's about, you could hold them. When I was sick a couple of weeks ago, my youngest heart daughter held me through the whole thing. That was holding the space. She didn't talk. She didn't try and fix. It was just being there. So yeah. So I have a question for you. How is doing tarot holding space for other people?
Oh, that's very interesting. Well, I think you're stepping a little bit into being an intuitive, being a psychic medium, being a reader of any type, or even as a psychologist, therapist, all those counselor, those situations literally is holding space for someone to be, right? And so when you're giving readings, intuitive readings, or that kind of thing, tarot readings, literally you're stepping in, and I picture it like there's this circle of energy around everyone, right? And so and I'm stepping into that energy, and I begin to hold that space. And you literally, when you're in there, there's no maneuver. You don't move things around. I'm not moving things around in their space. I'm just holding that space and understanding it, and being able to bring those messages in that way, holding that space.
Is it telling a story? Is holding a space
Well,
telling a
well,
story?
when you're with their energy, you literally will be able to tell the story through, if you're using tarot, you can tell the story through it from their energy. I'm not sure how it's the holding space part would be more just stepping in and experiencing their energy and allowing it, but not trying to change it, right? I'm not trying to change your story. I'm not trying to change your anything. I'm not trying to change any outcomes. I'm not trying to fix. I'm just there to hold and enter in and be able to bring hopefully clearer messages to anything they may be inquiring about. Right.
And it's all about really active listening too.
Yeah.
Right. Because you really have to hear what they're really asking you. And when you're doing stuff on the channel, you know, you and others, it's like the question comes across, but there's a lot of sorting. What is this really saying? What does it mean? You know, and am I getting this right? And tell me, did I read it right? You know, that kind of stuff. And it gets tricky because sometimes even the viewers are sitting here going, I have no idea what that's meant, you know?
Right. What was that question?
Right.
Someone could literally ask a question. Will I meet my person? Let's say now, but you know, that's a loaded question, right? So spirit may not really want to answer that question,
Right.
Because the true answer to their quandary could be a completely different thing, and it literally, so when you step in and hold that space, the message could come through that you're absolutely not alone. You're very loved. You have, you know, there might be a whole other thing that they need to hear before even entering in a question of bringing in love. So yeah, so the importance of being able to step in and just listen and hold that space is super important as a reader, because you'll miss spirit always will bring a message in, but it just adds that extra layer of I don't know, awakening or that kind of thing within a reading, if you add that layer of just holding space and really feeling in and listening to what else is really, what's underneath that question, right?
Yeah.
I know too, when I was walking through, I can go back through so many times in my life where people, you remember those who held space. When I think back, I know there was 1,000 people around me, right? When Ben was passing, just so much love and people and that kind of, and support like that. But guess what? Who I remember are those who just came and held space, held that space, didn't try to fix it, didn't try to change anything. They just allowed. They allowed whatever to take place, right, with me. And it is so such a beautiful shared human experience when you can do that for someone. And I know that it's so hard. It can be uncomfortable, but that's your uncomfortableness, right? So if you're holding space for me and it becomes uncomfortable and you're trying to do this and that, that's an opportunity for you to check and see okay, why am I uncomfortable? Why do I want to fix this? And that's a perfect opportunity for that. But how wonderful is it? What a wonderful, beautiful gift to be able to go in and just hold space for those. And I literally, you know, thinking of, a couple instances that were just such divine. But that's on a big scale. But again, there's many layers. You can, as a human experience, we're around a lot of humans. We could go to the grocery store, and the person behind you, as a human to human experience, something's going on with that person. You can hold that space. Good afternoon. How's it going? And then stop and hold that space and allow that person to be. So whatever comes out of that, that's a real connection. You're not going to try to fix them. You're not going to do anything. Hi, I see you. You put, and I do this because I'm putting the bubble around them, right? You're holding that space, allowing, it could be just a little interaction like that. That human contact, it could look like it's zero, but it could be life-changing for that person.
Yeah, you never know. And that's part of it too. So you don't need to know. Right? Holding space is you're doing it not because you're getting something back. I'm always thinking about this sort of, well, you didn't send a thank you card, that kind of stuff. It's like, well, is the reason you sent it because you needed a thank you card? And when people stop and say, oh, no, I sent it because I care. Okay. Then you got what you needed. Then you held that space, and that's what it was. But that's just an example. I'm not really thinking about the thank you cards so much. But then there's the moment of well, that's a sore issue for me anyway, because having been housebound for so long, I'm not going to the store to get cards. It's so that's been an issue for me to try and figure out, can I go to the post office? Well, the post office, the stairs are not accessible. And, and then I go through this whole thing, and then finally I go, they're not getting a card. Okay. Next topic.
Next. Yeah.
But it's you're talking about it as a psychologist, and I'm thinking about it as a sociologist. It's a version too. It's when people are sharing their stories, that if you're really listening, some people are just really good at it. I mean, I used to watch Lisa Jean interview my colleague, people, and just go, wow, she's really good at that. And it's really holding the space, but doing it in a way where that other person knows that they're really being heard.
Yep.
My style is very different from that, but I was always amazed, how do you come up with all those questions? But they're good. They're good. She's very present. But yeah, so you do it that way. And then there's the moment when you're teaching. Yes. And that's another ball game. But teaching where somebody has taken the risk, and of course I do this a lot in my classes and over time, to try and get them to talk. My style is not to talk at, but to get them to sort of bring out
it's a shared experience.
And validate, that they actually bring something to the discussion. And in courses on things like diversity, it really matters, right? So how do you get them to talk without yelling at each other, interrupting each other, all of that? So I do a whole thing where I say, I'm inviting you to hear each other's differences. Now, you could be in a grocery store, just as you brought up, or you could be answering a question that somebody writes in when you're on the chat, or you could be in a classroom setting, which can be pretty explosive under certain conditions. I had a boy once years ago who was so mad at me, he went and sat up on top of his desk and turned his back to me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, where you sort of go, oh, that's new. What am I going to do now? So holding the space starts to be a way of being,
Mhm.
It's not just a strategy, it's not just a moment, it's really how we should be living our life. Well, I shouldn't use the word should, but it's how you can live your life. I'm going to live my life as someone who has loving presence, someone who holds the space to begin, right? To begin the interaction.
Mhm.
And some people would call it active listening, but holding the space could be no judgment, could be trying to impact the outcome is one of those moments.
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah, right. Were you?
I was just gonna say not, and it's not listening to respond or try to change anything. Right. You're literally listening to offer this space for them to go from this to this, right? On their kind of in their own
Funny,
way.
I just thought of somebody I haven't thought of in probably 30 years. Carl Rogers, who was a very famous psychologist. And back in the day when I was working at the airlines, we were running these groups. And we were trying to get people, workers, the people we worked with, it was a very authoritarian environment. The airlines is notorious for modeling itself after the military. That was its early days, right? So the setting was very authoritarian. And we were charged, Ed and I were charged with running these workshops to help people get out of that mindset and become more collaborative, right? Well, that was a tough call. I mean, imagine meeting somebody who's only known rules and I'm going to just tell you what to think and what to do and you're grinning. There's a little resonance there. Just imagine that.
Yeah.
And you need to somehow help them, not help them, but hold the space for them to become able to realize themselves. Right?
Yes.
So the strategy we used back then was we would invite 4 coworkers up to a room. We'd sit in this room and we wouldn't talk. We'd just sit there. We wouldn't say a word. And sometimes it took as long as a half an hour. And they'd be squirming a little bit. And finally someone would say, well, what's going on here? It's like, oh, good. Okay. Now we can start working. And they'd be like, what? And they'd get a little pissed off, right? But it was, how do you hold the space for people who resist having anything have that level of flexibility or emotional life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that became some of my early training. So when I get into classes where the topic was something like race or gender or whatever, something that's had a certain historical resonance in the social world and can be very controversial. So I have to say to them, I'm going to invite you to listen, not for how much you think about that other person, not to judge them, but listen for how they're different from you. That's holding the space. That's saying, I'm going to listen. I'm not going to talk. In fact, I'm not even going to think about what I'm thinking. I'm going to try and hear what they're saying and say, oh, and if I ask them to repeat it, can you repeat it back? Did you really hear them, or did you start thinking about something else? So holding a space is also about not hearing your own stuff at the same time. So years ago, I was teaching a class on race, and they're always tricky, and they're always tricky because people have such big feelings about them. So it's always a challenge to try and figure out how to get them to process through, to learn something new, to without trying to hold the space, without trying to impact the outcome. Even though that's your agenda, right? Your agenda is, I'm going to educate, but what does it mean to actually educate? So you get down that road. Okay. So there was a woman in this class, and we're into the semester a little bit. So now they're really comfortable and they're talking about stuff. And she starts talking about how her best friend, this woman was African-American. Her best friend is gay, a gay guy. And she starts mocking him, but he's her best friend. And as she's mocking him, she's really mocking what it means to be gay. It's really, and, well, gay is this and gay is that and gay is the other thing. And I was struggling because I'm like, how am I going to shift this? So this is one of those moments when spirit intervenes, and I hear this voice say, popsicle mold. And I'm going, popsicle mold. Oh, so she finishes and she's all done. She's very sure of herself and very confident. And yes, it's okay. Yes, I'm against racism, but I just don't agree with people being gay. Okay. So I'm going, okay. All right. So y'all know what a popsicle mold is? And they're like, oh yeah. You ever have them? So we get playing, right? We're playing now. And yeah. So what do you know about popsicle molds? So they're telling me, you can change the flavors, blah, blah, blah. I said, yeah. So you put in raspberry, you eat all the raspberry, and then you decide you're going to get some more. So I'm going to do grape. Okay. But you ate all the raspberry, but the mold's still there, right? And they're like, yeah. And I said, well, so let's say that racism is what was in the mold. And so now we've gotten rid of racism, but the mold's still there. So what are you now holding? And I looked at this woman, I said, now you're holding homophobia in the mold. And you're saying that you're against racism, but you've kept the mold in place. So now you're still holding the mold. The mold hasn't gone away. Just the way of thinking that made that level of prejudice possible. So if you're against racism, that means you have to be against anything that fits in that mold. So she was like, oh, I never thought of that. I was like, oh, wow, that was cool. It doesn't always work, but it was a moment. But I think those are the kinds of things I kept thinking when you were talking about being in a grocery store line. Sometimes, there's somebody there who's not particularly nice or
true,
or has a position that's not particularly friendly to what your position is. How do you hold the space then?
Yeah.
And you're not in a classroom,
Exactly.
you're not teaching, you have no standing. That's the part that's really tough. And it has been for me, being through these past almost 3 years of having my life changed, I don't have the standing in the community that I had in the classroom. Right. So that's a whole other layer of that.
And sometimes I think that, in that situation, when you're in line, it doesn't necessarily mean that you actually have to verbally communicate, but you can spiritually hold space for people around you. Yeah. And it's a great, the only reason I say grocery line is because I find myself in those lines. It really offers you opportunities of a lot of either challenges or just awareness of the immense pain that people are in and grief. And it just, you're standing there. What else do you have to do? You can hold that space for them in that spiritual sense. But I just really love the popsicle mold. And I want the family that's listening here, I want us all to really remember this popsicle mold. What do we currently have in our molds? Or do we even have a mold anymore? Have we tried to break the mold and at least get rid of it so we're not filling it back up with something else?
And it's about judgment too,
what are we judging?
That's what judgment is.
Judgment is this mold. So what is it that you can so keep going back to that mold. Again, wisdom through awakening. Chrys just offered us this whole awakening piece, this wisdom piece to help us awaken to what are we currently judging? What do we have in our mold? So we feel like we've really worked on that racism piece, but you still have a judgment towards, maybe it's unspoken, but you still have a judgment towards men in general, let's say. If you're walking down, you know what I mean? What is it? So whatever, I'm just making that up, but what is it's just a great opportunity to look what's in our mold. Take a peek every once in a while. Let's continue to peek in. It's so amazing, Chrys. It's just an easy tool to take a look at, get an actual popsicle mold, put it on your shelf to remind you to look in what's in my mold now. Because we will continue to clean that mold out. And if we can crack it and bury it someday, that's awesome. But I do feel that we are human beings. We just seem to do a lot of judging of others. It's just kind of in that I don't want to say it's part of our nature. I do feel though it's part of our narrative that has been pushed into us.
Yeah, it's part of our culture.
So yes, it's cultural. It's not part of your nature to be judgy. It's part of our cultural, it's part of our narrative that has been put into us. So if that's a portion that you need to let go, and you've heard over and over, oh, it's just part of our nature to be judgy. No, it's not. It's part of a narrative that we need to release.
You're starting to sound like a sociologist.
Oh. I always wanted to be a sociologist.
Well, you are. So, yeah. But what's the point of what's the point of it? You know, I mean, we're almost talking around it in a way. We're talking about holding the space, which is a very
it's huge.
It's a very loving that goes back to last week with being in love with everyone. So, you know, it's like when you in that energy, right? We're really talking about how to raise the vibration, how to raise the frequency, how to keep, well, what's the point of that? Because there might be people out there listening who haven't done the work we've done about frequency and vibration and love and all of that. But I think part of it, holding the space, is saying, I want this space to be filled with love and kindness because this is the planet I want to live on. Does that make any sense?
Yes. Yes. And that gets me to another point of a holding space type of situation. So when someone reaches out, or, you know, if you're on social media and you see the post of, oh, please pray, my mom just went in the hospital, or please pray, blah, blah, whatever that is. And your response is, my response, I'm hugging you because I'm a hugger. So I send those hugs, and because I feel that is such a gift for humans to be able to have that contact, and it's such a special space. And so I send that, and then I'll say, I'm holding space. And for me, I'm saying, when I say holding space for someone I'm praying for, is that I'm wrapping that in a bubble. I'm with source love, and just holding that and allowing spirit to bring in whatever they need in regards to the prayers they're asking for. And just love and light. I mean, it's just full love. And but another it just, you just probably saw me, where'd you go? I just saw also with that that in holding space for people in prayer and safety. So a lot of times at the end of my show, on my YouTube, at the end of shows and stuff, I'll say thank you to the moderators for holding the space in the community here and keeping us safe.
Mhm.
And so the moderators will recognize when there's chit chat that may be stepping into a line that they know that I'm not comfortable with, if it's not love and light and uplifting in regards to myself, or if I'm having a guest on, or the person we're talking about. They're in there to help me with that, because they know that that's my heart, right? So that's another area too, holding space for protection. Does that make sense, Chrys?
Yeah.
You have a
Yes, Debbie.
you have a quandary looking. You're like,
Oh, I'm thinking about the holding the space for people who I don't agree with.
Oh, that's a good one. Let's talk about it. Let's break that down.
So, my brother and my nephew were here not long ago, and my nephew, well-meaning nephew, starts to mock my brother. And in mocking him, he's calling him an old man, which, by the way, leads me to another topic, but that's the ageism piece, which is crazy. But he starts treating him in a very ageist way. And I know he didn't mean any harm. So, but being the cranky old person I am, I turned to him and said, "Do you know what ageism is?" And he looked at me, he was stricken. "What?" I said, "Do you know what ageism is?" So then we had that conversation. I don't think I did that well. I think I was being judgmental, and I was reacting. And those are moments, I've certainly had moments like that. Somebody's being racist and I'm right there.
Yeah.
My voice is right there. That's the activist saying, no, that's not acceptable. There are various topics that we touch on: ageism, ableism, racism, sexism, homophobia, all of them. When confronted with some of that, we tend to, those of us who have righteous indignation, we tend.
Anya, I am.
Yeah.
You're speaking my language right now.
I know I am.
This is my hardest, one of my main challenges right here. Yeah.
Right. So what do you do? Or the Trumpers who just won't listen to any reason. That it's such an interesting phenomenon. And it's not the first one we've had. Certainly we can track it through history, but this sense of my nephew's partner put up a thing on Facebook, and no, it wasn't her. It was another person put up a thing on Facebook she lives in the Adirondacks, right? Adirondack Mountains. It's very right leaning. And then a whole bunch of people came in and said, well, you clearly, I haven't been watching the Fox network and hearing what the truth is. My whole body reacted.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Yes. What?
Yes.
And then I had a student last year who said, when I said, well, the data says, and he stands up, this is on Zoom, stands up and he says, data? Who cares about data? Who's data? And he left class. He never came back.
Wow.
So this is a troubled culture in the sense that the truth is negotiable now. And truth is, my truth and your truth, and you can hear people all the time saying, well, that's your truth. My truth is not. So we get caught in those traps.
You do you, boo.
Yeah, right. So when does holding the space cease to exist? And what are we talking about? In a way, you and I are both sort of on the same page, sort of going, oh yes, we are loving and kind, and we're having, and then somebody steps on my being, my world, and I'm like, wait a minute, just stop. That hurts me. So
where's that line? Where's that?
What do we do with it?
How do we do that? How do we stay in that? Right. I'm holding space and doing it this way. And it's funny that you bring that all up, because I wrote it down earlier when we were discussing. So it's like, how do we react in those difficult situations, and what is the best way when you want to hold space for someone in the line that's being, coming from a very shadow space, or the Trumpers, or, all those people. And I just want to put in here, you guys, hold on for a second, because I have to add this story in here with you. I was just in San Diego. I met with, my lifelong friends. And I think I told you about this, Chrys. It's very hard to love these beings so much, but when they are so, for me, in my understanding of things, caught up in the fox situation, right? The fox truth. And not trying not to react. So I'm sitting there and I'm in an observer. So I'm trying, Chrys. So I'm trying to hold that space and, not try to fix anything, because it's not my journey. But I'm in the middle of it. I have two people on either side of me, and it's just me against, and it's not against, but you know what I mean? And, they start talking about their beliefs of, where, how, Biden is awful. And so if you're watching this video and it's a long time from when we recorded it, you can put in anybody you want here as far as the opposite side, right? So they just don't like this person. And they create all these mad stories. And I'm just like, I'm curious. I'm so curious to where they got these stories. But of course, they watch Fox, but they believe it. And then one says, oh, Florida. I love Florida. I so want to move there. I love DeSantis.
Oh.
And that's exactly, Chrys. I thought, I was doing really good and just kind of allowing this to play out and understanding this is their journey. And I was searching for some kind of question to ask, because and I'm going to come back to that. So remember, I said question. Okay. But as soon as that flew out of her mouth, I was just like, and excuse me, family, what in holy fuck did you just say? I mean, and that was the question I came up with, because I know that the conversation.
Say that out loud?
Yeah, I did.
Did you? Wow. Oh, wow. Okay. That was brave.
Because I was just like, I'm listening. I'm trying, and I literally did, but you're battling with yourself within this. Again, it's not easy. But again, it's a good challenge. It's a good understanding of where your popsicle molds are full of, and like that. And this is one. And I would really like to clean it out. I would like to clean my mold out. I don't want to hold this judgment towards Foxers and Trumpers. And I just don't. I don't want to, but I do. And but I would like to clean that mold out. But when, so then they're like, oh yeah, we're not supposed to talk about this in front of Debbie. I'm like,
what?
Yeah, because they know that I'm opposite, right? So they're like,
well, it sort of
vote, people, vote. So
oh, that was good.
So they, so that they kind of changed the subject. I'm like, yeah, don't even, I can't even, don't even, like, it just, that, and they kind of smiled and I smiled or whatever. And we, changed the subject to things that were just more, but, so coming back, so I wanted to share that story, since you shared one of your stories that it was a challenge for you, and our response. I know some of my triggers, and I know why some things trigger me more than others. Injustice is one. right? Anything injustice is super hard for me. And to not respond and it's okay to be angry. But here, let's figure out how we can pull our what we're feeling and not just put it in the mold and anger and respond in that way. How do we hold space? So bringing it back around, how do we hold space in this situation? And it's asking the right questions.
I'm sitting here saying to myself, maybe there are some times when you don't hold the space. Now let's have a discussion about that, because
Okay.
ever the activist, I'm sitting here saying to myself, there are times when I'm going to go to the mat around the interests of social justice.
But that's still holding space there. There's a way to do it, I feel, that we can be in that protective space of love and light within a social justice situation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we want awakening through wisdom. Okay. And so we're holding space for wisdom through awakening through this wisdom piece.
Oh, yeah.
Correct.
I forgot. Yeah.
So we can hold that awakening, wisdom through awakening space in a social injustice situation. We can. It's very hard, humans, but we can. And it's literally coming back and asking that question. So let's take a scenario. Let's look at the situation with my friends sitting there. If I had not reacted,
well,
I did ask a question, but it wasn't the proper question, right? I said, "What the holy?" But you could ask a question. So you could say, "So what you're saying is that you love a man who believes in this, this, and this." And then you've placed it onto them.
No, or you could say, explains, maybe having said that, you could help me understand what it is you like about it.
Okay, so then they say,
well, I think it's right that he's stopping gay marriage. And I know that really bothers you, Debbie, but I don't believe in it.
Right. So you're handing it back to them.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a feeling they wouldn't say that. They would go more towards, whatever. I don't know, but I don't think they would have said the gay marriage. But that could happen. So if they did say that, then it's on them. Then you're like, okay, so you're saying, so then you repeat it back. You say, oh, you love them. You love him because he is, he's squashing gay marriage. And then they look at you and they go, oh, she's gay. So I just was like, okay. You know what I mean? So it's asking the questions. It's asking the questions and putting it back on them to say it out loud. Oh, I guess I am a racist. Or, so it becomes an awakening for them. So if we go into these tougher times of holding space, we can literally put through wisdom, awakening through wisdom here in this space, and come back with questions that offers them the opportunity to awaken.
You reminded me of something that happened to me years and years ago. I was fresh out of graduate school and teaching at a local college, and it was a Catholic school, and very Jesuit, and the students were very obedient, which I also found somewhat unusual. And so I was teaching theory, but I was doing what I sort of do naturally, so I wasn't even really thinking about it. And one of the students said, "Would you go to lunch with us?" And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because we have a friend who thinks that he's the master of argument, and we would like him to meet you. And it was one of those, okay, what's really going on here? And I'm not thinking about skills. I'm just being who I am. And I'm not like, I don't know what he's talking about. He said, well, just come with us and just meet this friend of ours. So we go to the cafeteria and they set it up. We're sitting at a long table and they put this kid straight across from me and they bait him. Tell her what you think about, I don't even remember anymore. And I looked at him and I just smiled. That's all I did. I listened and I smiled. And they're saying, well, are you going to talk to him? I said, well, I haven't heard all of his argument yet. And they're saying, well, so they're pushing him. So tell her more of your argument. So I'm saying, so what does your argument assume? Well, where do you get that information from? And so all I did was to do what I know how to do pretty well, which is, this is how I teach. What is that? How does this work?
Yeah.
Where do you get it from? What are its consequences? Like I had a student last year who said, well, if somebody did X, Y, and Z to me, I'd smash him. And I said, and then where would it stop? What do you mean? Well, you're mad at them because they're violent and you're going to be violent in response. What's left? Now you're both violent. So what kind of world is that?
Yeah.
And she's like looking at me going, I never thought of it that way. It's like, well, that's what we're doing all the time. That's what it is. You try and annihilate me. Now I'm going to annihilate you better, but that was a moment with those kids at this college. And they were beside themselves. And it wasn't a teacher saying, here's what you have to think. It was a teacher saying, how are you thinking?
Yeah.
What is your argument built on? So now I'm going to tell you, I love DeSantis. What is it you love about him? I love that he stands up to the powerful. Oh, how do you know they're powerful? Who are the powerful? What do they think? By the time you get to like the fourth question, your friends have now turned on you.
Yeah.
And they're going, hey, Debbie, that's enough. That's enough. They'll feel the heat.
Yeah.
They'll underneath that. But the real issue is that the real dogmatic ones have to really defend their position.
Yeah. So you're
offering on all sides of the issue, right?
And so you're offering that space for them to figure that out.
Yeah.
And defend what they believe.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful.
But one of the things I've learned is that one of the things Fox relies on are sound bites. Now, how do I know that? I had the luxury of sharing a hospital room with a woman in the next bed who watched Fox 24/7 for 4 days.
I would have been out of my mind.
Well, now let's talk about holding space. She needed that, right? Yeah. She was sick. I'm lying there saying, so do I really want to put something on this that's negative? And I'm sort of wishing I could find earbuds, so she could
absolutely
without me listening to it. But I learned a lot because I wouldn't normally do that. And so I'm sitting there going, oh, listen to how they're doing it. It's not complex. These are sound bites, absolute sound bites. And so people who are watching them constantly are repeating the sound bites.
Right.
And that's what they're doing. And it's not hard. This is the educational system we've developed.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm in the middle of teaching this stuff, but this is the education system we've developed. We don't want critical race theory because we don't want people thinking. We don't want people remembering the stories of women activists. We don't want people sort of saying, oh my God, they force-fed women in prison who are trying to get the vote. They don't want any of that level of substance. So now let's move it into a whole other category. Let's move to UFOs, right? I bring up UFO to my colleagues. I must be crazy. So now I tip them up by saying, I need to tell you something, booga booga. And they're like, oh, not that stuff again. It's that kind of stuff, right? But I keep going. And then I say things like, well, even the Department of Defense has now released some information. So what do you do with that? Well, we all know they're here. I was like, wow.
Mm.
Wow. Okay, so that you swallowed that, but what does that mean? So if this is where the first part is that we're not really having conversations. We're really reciting what we think we know. We're really not sorting.
I just, oh my gosh. Can you say
No,
that
no,
again?
that's the
Yeah.
culture right now.
Yeah.
That's why Trump is attractive, because he speaks with rage, talks up to what they think are the powerful. He makes everybody else the powerful, even though he's the one wielding the power. He's the one selling the secrets to other countries.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one making money. Steve Bannon is the one who took the money for the wall and put it in his pocket. We've got those kinds of things. But now we've got sound bites that say, well, that's just the Democrats. They're trying to destroy the Republicans. No, I think you're doing it all on your own, but okay.
Yeah.
So we get caught in that either or. And then it goes right back to the beginning of this conversation about holding the space.
Yeah.
What are we holding the space for? Can you hold the space for someone who says, I love DeSantis?
Yeah.
Or as Linda G says, DeSantin.
Yeah.
So,
it's just a different type of, so again, we share different types of ways to hold space. So either you're holding space for someone who you're praying for, or you're holding space for someone who's just gone through something, and you're actually sitting there, but you're holding that space and just allowing it to be, and allowing them to be whoever they are within that grief in that moment, so there's different types of holding space, human to human. And so I do feel that this is just another opportunity of how to hold space for someone who's more of a challenge for you, right? And so recognizing that, here's a tool. When you come upon that challenge, say, okay, I'm holding this space. And in the middle of this space that I'm holding for this person is wisdom and awakening. How do I help hold this space and usher that in for this situation? And mine would have been asking better questions than the one I asked.
It also would have been, it occurs to me that, because you brought up prayer, it occurs to me that when we're wiser and more awake, you can hold the space for someone you don't agree with by not saying a word.
Or not saying a word, and just holding that space. And that's what I was trying to do.
Yeah, but
internally, I was not in my awakened.
Well, because the other side of this is do no harm.
Do no harm.
Right? Do no harm.
Do no harm.
A statement, because that's where you're at. You're saying do no harm. And then somebody close to you says, I'm about to do harm. And now what do you do?
Right.
Now you're saying to yourself, I want to hold the space for do no harm, but somebody here is being harmed. And so what do I do now?
And that's part of protecting. That's part of that protection piece too, because you're holding that space and protection as well. So you don't want anybody to be harmed within there. And if someone comes into that and starts to harm, that's when you legitimately need to step in and stop the harm. And that's literally, you can see this play out in workspace where you have, a work meeting going on and someone says something racist, and you have your friend here who was a target of that racist comment. And if you sit there silent and you're like, well, I'm holding space.
You're complicit.
You're complacent, and you're just as bad as the person who is just racist.
Well, not as bad, but I think you are.
Yeah.
I don't
You know what I mean? You know what I mean.
I do know what you mean. Yes.
Silence is not helpful in the situation.
So there's another way of holding space in those situations.
Yes.
So what would that be?
It would be
I'll pray for you.
saying, Frank, I have a question for you. So what you're saying, and so that's a good opportunity to bring in one of your questions, Chrys, that you do so well at, in regards to whatever statement this person made in a racist statement. So what you're saying here is blah, 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 blah. And they have to say, well, yeah, that's what I was saying. But then they see, oh, that was really ugly. And that was probably not right. And I apologize. That could be the opportunity right there. And so awakening happened because you held that space of protection.
Well, I'm going to remind us about nonviolent communication, NVC, right? I talked about this way back on the earlier videos. Nonviolent communication was something founded by a man named Marshall Rosenberg, who's now on the other side. And he managed to find ways to bring really highly conflicted situations into peace. Okay. Everything from going and getting Israeli and Jewish, Israeli and people from Jerusalem to agree with each other or to get along, to go into, troubled neighborhoods and getting people who are fighting to talk to each other. So the steps for his stuff are simple. This is almost like the Ho'oponopono, right? But the steps are, I observe, not I evaluate, because evaluation is judgment, right? Mm-hmm. So I observed a comment. Now you have to find a way to say it without being evaluative. So here's Frank.
Poor Frank. Yeah, here's Frank.
I know. So here's Frank. I heard you say, usually you try not to use the you word, but I heard such and such a statement. Okay, that's an evaluation or an observation, not an evaluation. There's no judgment. I heard. It's very passive. I heard. Mm-hmm. The second step is I felt sad. I felt bothered. I felt upset. I felt unsafe. I felt unsafe. There you go. Okay, so I felt unsafe. I need to work in an environment where people respect each other. Okay. Frank, my request would be, is this something you could agree to? Okay. Now, the judgment is out. You've held the space without relinquishing your, your respectable position without pissing people off. Yeah. And yet Frank has heard you. Mm-hmm. Now, holding the space means now you've given this to Frank, right? Now you have to wait, step back, hold the space. Frank may not like that. Frank may not get that. Yeah. And Frank may not go along with it, but that's okay because you've said it, mm-hmm. taking care of what you need to. You weren't violent. You weren't judgmental. You were being very good. And your friend sitting next to you is saying, you held the space for me. Thank you. And I'm yes. And that you did that with love. Yeah. That's what I always found so profound about what this man developed. I tried using it in an elementary school with teachers who didn't like it at all. But it really, they were like, yeah, I just want to fight. It's like, okay, we tried. But when it's done properly, and without judgment, but you got to think about it. You got to say, here's what we mean by holding the space. Here's what the kind of world we want to create. That's what we're really talking about. Yeah. What you do every day with doing the readings you're doing is to try and give people comfort, try and help them awaken, give them the wisdom so they can awaken. Yeah. Using tools that will help them get there. That's the tarot. That's, that's actually laughter. That's partly what you've been doing a lot lately. That's all raising that vibration, mm-hmm. right? So you take the tools, you take your agenda, which is to create a peaceful world. It's not about saying you're wrong. It's not about saying this person's right, this person's wrong. It's about creating peace. Mm-hmm. How do we coexist? How do we coexist without destroying each other? And then moving beyond that. Now you're into a whole other realm.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're saying. What Gandhi always said about be the change you want to see in the world. But that's the hardest part. The hardest part is that we're so programmed with the language of the argument, the language of cancel culture, that we can't even get there.
Yeah.
So those tools are really helpful for that reason. Yeah.
Awesome. Absolutely. And in retrospect, I could have done better in my situation, but I reacted. And I know that we do that. We're humans and so forth. But when I get another chance, because I do love these people and they are in my life, and I will have another chance, and I will do better. But let's all do good. Let's all look at our, again, back to, I keep holding it up. Can you see this? I can. It's a popsicle mold. Your popsicle molds.
She really likes that popsicle mold.
I do.
I'm gonna have to get you some.
And I'm very visual, so I do like the popsicle mold, and it's easy to see, and it's easy to check. So let's continue to check and recheck what's in our popsicle mold. What can I work on?
But I also want to validate what you did, which is that you were really, your passion was driven by social justice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an admirable quality. That's not negative. And those of us who are out there trying to make this a better world, frequently will we confront that. When George Floyd's being murdered and we're standing there, we aren't standing there saying, oh, well, I feel we're not doing that.
No,
we're saying enough is enough. And sometimes that's appropriate.
Yeah.
Right.
But this in this situation, this could have been an awakening moment that I missed because I was unable to contain my piece of emotion in regards to the injustice. Yeah. But it's so takeaway today, keep checking your popsicle molds, and let's find those opportunities to hold space for our humankind, our humans, whether you're in a grocery line or you're on social media and someone asks for prayer. Find those places to hold space for others and bring that love and light and awakening. And in those tough discussions, asking those questions of awakening. So I'm looking forward to the comments this time. I do every time, but thank you for the beautiful conversation that you all add. And thank you, Chrys, again for hanging out and
for being your friend,
being my friend, and doing this.
My friend. Yeah. I'm your righteous indignation. So there we go. Yeah. So, no, I'm really looking forward to the comments too, because these are really tough topics. That's a really tough topic. And I've been doing this, teaching in this with this material for a very long time, and there's no easy way. I used to say regularly when I had to teach a course on race, it was the hardest course I had. It was very emotionally difficult because well-meaning people can say really not well-meaning things. Yes. And so trying to get people to really hear each other and to be able to help heal. Yeah. Really, it's about healing, Yeah. So thank you, Debbie.
Yeah. Thank you, Chrys. Okay. Loving all of you. And we will see you again next time. Blessings to you. Mm-hmm.